Let's talk about Moodle plugins. After a fresh installation of the vanilla Moodle codebase, you'll notice that there are already 448 plugins included. The standard Moodle distribution consists of core subsystems, and standard plugins. Plugins are grouped into different types, and as of version 4.5 there are 45 main plugin types. Some plugins can also define sub-plugin types, allowing them to have sub-plugins within their code. There are 19 sub-plugin types in the standard plugins. Looking at this page, each heading represents a plugin type. For example, under Activity Modules, all plugin names start with mod, meaning mod is the plugin type, assign is the plugin name, and mod assign is the full plugin name. In the next section, the heading has two parts, assignment and submission plugins. This indicates that submission plugins is a sub-plugin type of mod assign. The same applies to feedback plugins, which is another sub-plugin type. Inside the Moodle source code, there is a file called lib/components.json, which contains a list of all plugin types and their locations, as well as all core subsystems and their locations. Since mod plugins are located in the mod directory, the source code for mod_assign is in mod/assign. Inside this folder, the file db/subplugins.json lists all subplugins of mod assign and their locations. Looking in components.json again, you will see that some plugins share their folder with the core subsystems. For example, in the blocks directory, some subfolders belong to the core subsystem and are not the plugins. For example, AMD and classes. Some names cannot be used for plugins because they may conflict with version control system files or subsystem files. However, there is one exception: auth_db is a valid plugin name despite this restriction. The word plugin implies that it can be added or removed. Any plugin, even a standard one, can be uninstalled without breaking the site. Moodle core can call API methods from itself and from core subsystems. Subsystems can call each other and Moodle core. Plugins can call APIs from the core and subsystems. However, neither the core nor subsystems can call APIs from plugins. Also, plugins cannot call each other unless they explicitly define a dependency. So, how can Moodle plugins actually change the behavior of a Moodle site? Basically, at certain points, Moodle core makes an open call saying, "Who wants to add something here?" And some plugins respond, and Moodle then calls them. There are several ways plugins can modify Moodle's behavior. First, they add functionality specific to their plugin type. For example, just by existing, an activity module plugin announces that it should be displayed in the activity chooser when a teacher adds a new activity. Block plugins appear in the block selector, and data format plugins show up in the list of available download formats. Each plugin type has its own defined behavior. A block plugin cannot define an activity type, and an activity module cannot define a block. Additionally, a single block plugin cannot define more than one block type. Second, plugins can add settings and pages to the site administration by creating a settings.php file. Most plugins have this file, which allows them to define plugin-specific settings. Some plugin types also add items anywhere in the site administration tree. For example, many links in the report section, the development section, and other areas were added by plugins. Third, plugins can implement event observers. A plugin can have a db/events.php file where it lists all events it wants to listen to. For example, enroll cohort listens for events when a user is added to or removed from a cohort and automatically enrolls or unenrolls them from the relevant courses. The toLog plugin listens to all events and logs them, allowing admins to browse site or course logs later. Fourth, plugins can implement callbacks and hooks. Hooks were introduced in Moodle 4.3, and Moodle is gradually replacing callbacks with hooks. Depending on the Moodle version, certain functionalities will be available either as a callback or as a hook. Unlike event observers, hooks and callbacks can also return information to the caller. Some examples of what you can do with callbacks and hooks include adding items to the user menu or primary navigation, adding widgets to the user profile page, adding content to the footer, extending course navigation, inserting HTML at the top or bottom of any page or into the HTML head, extending forms including sign up, course edit, and course module edit forms, and many other functionalities that do not necessarily have UI changes but go beyond what event observers can do. To see available hooks, go to Site Administration, Development, Hooks Overview. There isn't a complete overview of callbacks, but you can search the code for the function Get Plugins with Function. The fifth way plugins can modify Moodle is through scheduled tasks. Some plugins, especially those handling data synchronization, rely entirely on scheduled tasks. A plugin can define a db/tasks.php file listing its tasks and default schedules. The Moodle cron system will execute these tasks regularly, and the administrator can modify the schedule or disable tasks if needed. Another powerful way to modify Moodle is by placing files in specific locations. Many plugins, including all standard ones, implement the privacy API simply by adding a privacy/provider.php file. This method is also used to extend features like Report Builder, where plugins can add report sources, audience types, and aggregation methods. Plugins can extend global search, analytics, and user tours in the same way. Plugins can even define their own events and hooks by placing classes in specific locations. To find the special locations, look for usages of the method getComponentClasses and namespace. Finally, some Moodle functionality can be overridden using settings in the config.php file. These settings do not appear in the UI, and Moodle does not explicitly ask plugins to provide them, but plugins offer the alternative functionality. One of the best examples is the alternative file system. Some plugins completely override Moodle's file storage, redirecting it to the cloud instead of the local drive. Similarly, you can replace Moodle's default handlers for storing user sessions, caching, or locking. For individual sites, you can even override the login page, front page, or any other page in Moodle without modifying core files. The config-dis.php file included with Moodle explains each of these settings in details.